I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. because the house felt wrong. Not loud. Not cold. Just wrong, the kind of wrong you feel in your bones before your mind can explain it. After living 40 years in the same farmhouse, you learn the language of silence. You know the difference between peaceful quiet and the kind that carries a warning. That night, the silence was heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 64 years old, and this house has been my whole life. It was built by my late husband Robert Collins and his father long before that. Every floorboard remembers footsteps that are no longer here. Every window has watched my children grow, argue, laugh, and leave. I slipped out of bed because my throat felt dry. The digital clock on my dresser glowed 3:02. I wrapped my robe tightly around me and stepped into the hallway. That was when I noticed it. A pale blue light lit from beneath my daughter Emily's bedroom door. Emily had moved back in after her divorce. 3 weeks of whispered phone calls, closed doors, and tired excuses. She said she was healing. She said she needed rest. I wanted to believe her, because believing your child is easier than questioning them. But no one who is healing stays awake at 3 o'clock in the morning with their phone glowing like a secret. I stood there listening. No music. No typing. Just silence, and that light. I knocked softly. Emily. No answer. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Emily was asleep at her desk, her head resting on her arms. Her glasses were crooked. Her phone lay beside her hand, screen still on. I stepped closer to wake her gently, and then I saw the screen. A message thread was open. At the top, a name made my chest tighten. Jason, ex-husband. My heart slowed as I read the last message. Jason, did you move the papers yet? Emily, tomorrow. Jason, she won't notice. Another message appeared. Jason, you're sure she hasn't found it? Emily, Mom doesn't even know what she's looking for. It's been hidden for 30 years. My knees went weak. Then came the final line. Once the property transfers, we split everything. Same deal. 60/40ths. In that moment, the truth hit me harder than any slap ever could. My own daughter was planning to steal from me. And worse, she believed I was too old, too foolish, too invisible to stop her. I closed Emily's door without a sound and stood alone in the dark hallway. My heart pounded so loudly I feared it might wake her. I wasn't just shocked. I was grieving. The daughter I thought I raised no longer existed. I returned to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking uncontrollably. One sentence kept echoing in my mind. She won't notice. That hurt more than the betrayal itself. Because it meant they had already erased me in their minds. For decades, I had been the one who held everything together. I made breakfast, remembered birthdays, filled out school forms, and kept family memories neatly stored away. I had spent my life putting everyone else first. When Robert died 8 years ago, I carried this family on patience alone. Emily and my son Lucas used to tell me they were proud of me. They called me strong. They said I was the reason our home never fell apart. I believed them. Because mothers are built to trust their children. That night, as dawn slowly crept toward the windows, I realized something terrifying. My family wasn't broken by loss. It was being destroyed by greed. And I was only just beginning to understand how deep the betrayal went. By the time morning arrived, I had not slept at all. The sky outside my bedroom window slowly faded from black to gray while my thoughts ran in tight, painful circles. One sentence refused to leave my mind. Hidden for 30 years. That was what Emily had written. 30 years was not a coincidence. It wasn't just a document or a mistake. It was a lifetime of lies carefully buried, and now my children were trying to dig it up for profit. I knew, deep down, that whatever had been hidden had something to do with Robert. After Emily left the house that morning, claiming she needed to clear her head, I did not waste a single minute. The moment her car disappeared down the long gravel driveway, I walked straight to my late husband's study. That room had remained untouched since the day he died. His desk still faced the window. His shelves were lined with the same books he used to reread every winter. Even the faint scent of old paper and wood polish lingered, as if he might walk back in at any moment. Stepping inside felt like walking into a memory that refused to age. I sat at his desk and opened the top drawer. Old bills. Insurance forms. Farm records. Everything looked neat. Predictable. Exactly how Robert liked things. But something inside me whispered that the truth was nearby. Robert had always been careful. Too careful. I began checking the bookshelves, running my fingers along their edges the way I had done while dusting for decades. That was when I noticed it. One shelf didn't sit flush against the wall. I pushed it gently. It moved. My heart began to race as I pulled harder. The shelf slid forward just enough to reveal a narrow space behind it. Hidden in the wall was a small wooden door, something I had never noticed in 40 years of living there. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside sat a metal lockbox, dusty and untouched. I carried it to the desk and opened it. The first document inside stole the breath from my lungs. A birth certificate. The name read, Samantha Reed. Father, Robert Collins. I had to sit down. There were more papers beneath it. Property deeds, one for a beach house in South Carolina, another for a small piece of land in Florida. Carefully folded letters written in handwriting I didn't recognize. They were addressed to Robert. From a woman named Lydia Reed. As I read, my hands shook harder. The letters told a story I had never known. Lydia begging Robert to be part of their daughter's life. Asking him to visit. To acknowledge her. To stop hiding. Robert had sent money. He had made promises. And then, he stayed away. Over and over again. The final letter was dated just days before his death. In it, Robert wrote that he was sorry. That he wished he had been brave enough to tell me the truth. That he hoped one day I would understand. 30 years of secrets sat inside that box. And my children were trying to claim them. I took photos of every document with my phone. Every letter. Every deed. Then I carefully returned everything to the box, slid it back into the wall, and pushed the shelf into place. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. Robert hadn't just lied to me. He had built another life while I was raising our children and believing in him. And Emily knew. That realization cut deeper than the affair itself. When Emily came home later that afternoon, I didn't confront her. I watched her instead. The way she avoided my eyes. The way her phone never left her hand. Every movement felt different now, calculated, careful. That evening, my son Lucas arrived unannounced. He rarely visited without calling first. Seeing him walk into the house that night felt planned. They spoke quietly in the living room while I cooked dinner. Their voices stayed low, urgent. I couldn't hear every word, but I didn't need to. I could feel the tension. At the table, Emily smiled like nothing was wrong. She passed me the bread. Lucas asked how my day had been. It was a perfect performance. After dinner, Emily said they needed to talk to me. She placed a folder on the table between us. Lucas explained that it was a trust document. He said it would protect me, make things easier if something ever happened. He spoke slowly, patiently, the way people speak to someone they think is already fading. What he didn't say was that once I signed it, I would lose control of everything. Emily added that there were legal issues coming up. A woman was making claims against Robert's estate. Someone who wasn't family. They meant Samantha. They wanted my house, my land, my life, while they fought over Robert's hidden fortune. What shocked me most was how calm they were. They spoke about my future the way people discuss selling old furniture. No emotion. Just timing and percentages. In their minds, I was already gone. I told them I needed time to think. Emily's smile faltered for just a second. That was when I realized something far more terrifying. They weren't asking for my permission. They were waiting for me to get out of the way. The next morning, Emily became a different person. She brought me coffee in bed, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. She asked how I slept. She asked if I was feeling tired. Her voice was gentle, almost sweet, but her eyes kept searching my face, as if she were looking for cracks. I answered carefully. "I'm fine," I said. A few hours later, the sound of another car pulling into the driveway made my stomach tighten. I looked out the window and saw Lucas step out, and behind him, a man I had never seen before. He wore a clean jacket and carried a leather folder. Emily rushed to the door before I could even ask who it was. "This is Dr. Bennett," she said quickly. "He's just here to do a little wellness check. Nothing official. Just to make sure everything's okay." I didn't remember agreeing to any check. Dr. Bennett smiled politely and asked if he could sit with me. His questions came one after another. "What year is it? Who is the president? Can you count backward from 100 by sevens?" I answered every question without hesitation. Lucas nodded slowly, as if relieved or disappointed. Emily stood behind the doctor, her arms crossed, watching me like a stranger. Then she spoke. "Mom's been forgetting things lately," she said softly. "She left the stove on once. And she repeats the same questions." None of it was true. Lucas added, "She's been confused sometimes. She forgets where she puts things. She has mood swings." They were building a story. I could hear it being constructed piece by piece, right in front of me. Dr. Bennett thanked me and said he would note everything. When he left, Emily immediately asked for my phone. "I want to download a safety app," she said. "Just in case." Lucas held out his hand for my car keys. "You shouldn't drive when you're tired," he said. By the afternoon, my world had shrunk. I reached for my phone and realized it wasn't where I left it. When I asked about it, Emily said she'd misplaced it. When I tried to step outside, the door didn't open. "Locked." "For your own good," she said calmly. That was the moment the truth became undeniable. They weren't waiting for me to fail. They were creating the failure themselves. That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling. Footsteps moved softly in the hallway outside my door. Someone was always there. Listening. Watching. Waiting. I knew if I stayed one more day, I would lose everything, not just my house or my money, but my voice, my freedom, my name. So I made a choice. Near midnight, I opened my bedroom window. Cold air rushed in, sharp and shocking. Below, the garden lay in darkness. Years ago, Robert had built a wooden trellis under that window for climbing roses. I had never been more grateful for anything in my life. I tied my rope tightly around my waist and climbed onto the windowsill. My hands trembled as I gripped the wood. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest. I wasn't young. I wasn't fearless. But I was desperate. Slowly, carefully, I climbed down. My palms burned. When I reached the bottom, I dropped the last few feet and landed hard. Pain shot through my leg, but I forced myself to keep moving. I ran toward the barn. The old farm truck was still there. The keys hung exactly where they always had. I started the engine and drove into the night. As I reached the road, lights flicked on behind me. Shadows moved in the windows of the house. They had noticed. But it was too late. I drove until my hands stopped shaking. Eventually, I pulled into a small motel at the edge of town and paid in cash. The room smelled like old carpet and soap, but it was quiet. For the first time in days, I was alone and safe. The next morning, I used the motel phone to dial a number I had memorized from Robert's hidden papers. Samantha Reed. She answered cautiously. When I told her who I was, she went silent. We met an hour later at a small coffee shop just off the highway. She didn't look like Emily at all. Her eyes were kind, but tired, the eyes of someone who had waited too long for promises that never came. She told me everything. After Robert died, Emily and Lucas had contacted her. They offered her a deal. Help them remove me from the picture, and they would give her half of Robert's hidden wealth. Samantha said no. She said she wouldn't destroy another woman just to claim what she was owed. That was when the final truth settled into place. The woman I had been warned about wasn't my enemy. My children were born 2 days later. We stood inside a small county courtroom that felt far too quiet for the storm it was about to hold. The walls were beige. The benches were worn smooth by decades of waiting bodies and nervous hands. Everything about the room felt ordinary, and yet my entire life was about to be placed on display inside it. I sat beside Samantha and her attorney, Grace Mitchell, a sharp woman with calm eyes and a voice that didn't shake. Behind me sat my brother, Henry Collins. He had spent most of his life as a judge before retiring, and when he offered to come with me, I knew this was no longer just a family dispute. Emily and Lucas entered together. They didn't look at me. That hurt more than I expected. Their lawyer stood first. She spoke confidently, smoothly, like this was just another routine case. She told the judge that I was confused, that I had disappeared from my own home, that I was no longer mentally capable of managing my affairs. She painted me as fragile, lost, dangerous to myself. Then Grace stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize a single word. She laid out the facts. The hidden properties. The secret child. The trust documents designed to strip me of control. The doctor sent to my house without consent. The locked doors. The missing phone. Each detail landed like a stone dropped into water. Then I took the stand. I told the judge what it felt like to be slowly erased by your own children. What it felt like to realize the people you trusted most were preparing to replace you while you were still breathing. Emily stared at the table. Lucas clenched his jaw. Then Samantha testified. She described the offer they made her. The money. The percentages. The way they spoke about me as if I were already gone. When my brother spoke, the room went completely silent. He explained how the trust was written, how it gave my children full control while leaving me legally powerless. He explained that this wasn't protection. It was theft. Finally, a licensed physician testified. Not a wellness check, not a favor, a real evaluation. He stated clearly that I was mentally sound and fully capable of managing my own life. The judge listened to every word. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm and unmistakable. She called it what it was: financial abuse. The trust was declared invalid. Emily and Lucas were ordered to stay away from me. The court authorized a full investigation into their actions. The room fell silent. I didn't feel victory. I felt free. Within weeks, everything they had built on lies began to collapse. Jason turned on Emily when he realized there was nothing left to take. He filed for divorce and released their messages to protect himself. Lucas lost his position at work when court records revealed his involvement. Banks do not trust men who try to steal from their own mother. They blamed each other. They blamed Samantha. They even blamed me. None of it mattered anymore. The trust was gone. The property was mine again. Robert's secret accounts were recovered through the court. The lies had nowhere left to hide. Emily sent letters begging for forgiveness. Lucas sent messages saying he had been misunderstood. I didn't reply. Some bridges don't need to be burned. They just need to be left behind. 3 months after the courtroom fell silent, I stood in the middle of the farmhouse one last time. Not because I had to leave. Because I chose to. Every room echoed with a version of myself I no longer was. A woman who believed love meant endurance. Silence. Sacrifice without limits. I walked slowly from room to room, running my fingers along the walls I had painted decades ago, the doorframes where I had marked my children's heights. I realized something then. Memories don't live in buildings. They live in us. I sold the farmhouse quietly. No announcements. No explanations. When the papers were signed, I felt lighter than I had in years. With the money recovered from 2 of Robert's hidden properties, I paid off every debt. For the first time since my 20s, I owed nothing to anyone. I bought a smaller house near a quiet river. It had white windows that let the morning light pour in, and a wooden porch that faced the sunrise. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like permission. Samantha visited often. We sat with coffee, talking about the past without letting it poison the present. She wasn't a reminder of betrayal anymore. She was proof that truth, even when buried for decades, always finds a way to breathe. I learned how to enjoy simple things again. Walking without fear. Sleeping without listening for footsteps. Making plans without asking permission. People think revenge has to be loud. That it has to look like destruction. Mine didn't. Mine looked like peace. At 64, I wasn't starting over. I was finally starting free. Backhand index pointing right. Part 6. The letters. The final choice. What forgiveness really means. Beyond the lookout. Part 6. Continue. Cardoon. Part 6. Part 6. The letters I never answered. The letters started arriving a few weeks after I moved. At first, it was just one envelope slipped quietly into my mailbox. Emily's handwriting. I recognized it instantly, the careful loops she used when she wanted to seem gentle, harmless. I didn't open it. I set it on the kitchen counter and made myself tea. I watched the steam rise and disappear, thinking about how many times in my life I had rushed to fix her pain before she even asked. That letter stayed unopened. Then came another. And another. Some were from Emily. Some from Lucas. Different handwriting, same message. They said they were sorry. They said they had been under pressure. They said they loved me. Lucas wrote that he had only been trying to protect the family. That he hadn't realized things would go so far. Emily wrote that she had been manipulated, that fear had made her act in ways she didn't recognize. They asked to meet. They asked to talk. They asked for forgiveness like it was something I owed them. I read every letter carefully. Not because I was tempted, but because I needed to understand something. Not one of them asked how I was. Not one of them asked what it felt like to be locked in my own home. To have my mind questioned. To be erased while still alive. Their apologies were about relief, not remorse. And that told me everything. One afternoon, Samantha came over with pastries from a bakery in town. We sat on the porch while the river moved slowly in the distance. "Do you miss them?" she asked gently. I thought about it for a long moment. "I miss the children I thought I had," I said. "Not the people they chose to become." She nodded. She understood that kind of loss. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about reopening doors that were closed to protect you. It's about refusing to carry bitterness into the life you fought so hard to save. I didn't respond to the letters. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Weeks passed. The letters stopped. The silence this time felt different. It wasn't heavy or threatening. It was clean. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the river gold, I sat on the porch and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that settles into your chest when you know you chose yourself. I thought about Robert then. About the man I had loved. About the secrets he carried. About the life he never had the courage to live honestly. His lies had shaped so much pain, but they no longer define me. I couldn't change what he did. I could change what I allowed to follow me into the rest of my life. That night, I gathered the letters, tied them with a simple ribbon, and placed them in a box. Not to punish anyone, but to remind myself. Survival doesn't always look like fighting back. Sometimes it looks like walking forward without looking behind. On my 65th birthday, I woke up to sunlight pouring through the white windows of my new home. The river outside moved slowly, steady and patient, as if it had nowhere else it needed to be. For the first time in many years, I felt the same way. There was no fear waiting in the hallway. No footsteps outside my door. No voices measuring my worth in percentages and paperwork. Just quiet, the kind that heals instead of wounds. I made coffee and sat on the porch, listening to birds argue in the trees. Simple sounds. Honest sounds. The kind I had stopped noticing when my life was ruled by obligation and endurance. People think freedom arrives with fireworks. It doesn't. It arrives quietly, when you realize no one owns your tomorrow. I thought about Emily and Lucas, not with anger, but with distance. They were chapters one had closed, not wounds I kept reopening. I had lost the children I believed I raised, and that grief would always exist somewhere inside me. But grief did not get to decide how I lived. I had spent most of my life believing love meant staying. That loyalty meant silence. That being strong meant enduring whatever was placed on your shoulders. I know better now. Love does not erase you. Family does not get to imprison you. And strength is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate. Samantha came by later that day with a small cake and 2 forks. We ate on the porch, laughing about nothing important. She wasn't a symbol of betrayal anymore. She was family, chosen, honest, and real. In the months that followed, I learned how to live without permission. I traveled when I wanted. I rested when I needed. I filled my days with things that didn't require explanation. Walking along the river. Reading until I fell asleep mid-page. Making plans without fear they'd be taken from me. At 65, I wasn't rebooting. I was reclaiming. If someone close to you ever tries to make you feel small, if they question your memory, your judgment, your worth, pay attention. That isn't love. That is control. And it often hides behind concern. It is never too late to take your life back. Not at 30. Not at 64. Not ever. I lost a husband. I lost the children I thought I had. But I gained something far more valuable. Myself. Thank you for listening to my story. If it spoke to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you feel comfortable, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Your voice matters.